Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my show Camera Tuesday. In today's episode, we're gonna make a very simple effort to make sure you understand what the hell you're supposed to buy. So let's dive right into it. Now first thing you have to understand, you have options. So what are these options? Now three core options you have is APS-C, you have Micro Four Third, and you have full frame. So understand this, full frame is full. But what does that mean? Simply think of it this way. When film format was created, there were very big films, like 1 foot by 1 foot film used to exist. Then people shrunk it down, classified it as medium format. They shrunk it down even more. They shrink it down to 35mm film format. That took off. Like that became the standard. That's why we classify anything that matches that size as full frame. That's why. So when you go smaller than that, basically you go from full frame, anything smaller you will classify it as crop factor. So if you have APS-C camera, you will always hear people say it has 1.5x crop in Nikon, it has 1.6x crop in Canon. And if you go to Micro Four Third, you will always hear people say it has 2x crop. So what is happening here is basically you see the surface area where photo is being exposed, basically like photo sites, they are of a certain surface area. This surface area is full frame. You go smaller than this is APS-C surface area. You go even smaller, that is Micro Four Third. Now you might be like, okay, this is too much hassle in digital world. Do not worry, this used to happen in film also. Film also had 35mm film format, medium format, 70mm format used for IMAX, 35mm, super 35mm. As you can see, like this is the film camera that we are used to. That's why everybody is classifying for this 35mm full frame. Then you have super 35, which is generally used for your movies, but this size is more or less close to APS-C. Then there is 16mm, which is more or less closer to Micro Four Third. So it's not a new thing having multiple crop factors. It's very common. So generally there are only two. You have super 35, which is used for movies, and you have 35mm photo cameras. Now if you buy a movie camera that gives you this ability, it's classified as large format. So don't get confused about it. So but all this matters nothing. You have to understand lens is the core. Everything else amounts to nothing if your lens is bad. So please understand this. Your options are this, okay, cool, but please choose and understand lens first. So you have full frame, you have APS-C, and you have Micro Four Third. So what about APS-C and Micro Four Third? Now you have to understand they were sold on a lie, specifically Micro Four Third, because Micro Four Third came after APS-C, and the whole idea was that because Micro Four Third sensors were smaller, they were cheaper relatively speaking, and they had less heating issues. So companies like Olympus and company like Panasonic, they developed very capable digital mirrorless cameras using this basically Micro Four Third sensor. However, they lied. Like this sort of images was going around in the internet where you go like, okay, see how much lens you have to have in order for full frame and how smaller your APS-C or Micro Four Third would be. But here's the deal, smaller lens always leads to smaller quality. The lenses are not this big because they have to be this big. You can find very old Nikon lenses, basically old film camera lenses, which are full frame, proper full frame, but they are small and light. The reason why these are so big, because nowadays we do what we call pixel peeping. We amp our digital print up very large. So manufacturers have to make lenses very big to make sure they don't have any vignetting, they don't have any chromatic aberration, they don't have any dull spots. So basically to compensate all that, that's why the lenses are so big. You can like many of you who are very old in photography, or you see retro photography gear, you will see the full frame lenses are this small, because they were not building complex lenses. They were not building lenses with image stabilization. They were not building lenses with autofocus system. They were not building lenses with absolute chromatic aberration. There is like no chromatic aberration, and vignetting used to be a likable thing. People wanted vignetting in their lens. Now we don't want it. So understand that the idea of small lens will give you great quality, that's not possible. Physics does not allow that. That's why you see cinema lenses that are made for super 35, basically APS-C, they are this big. Canon own cine lens lineup is like freaking huge. It has to be, to make sure that there is no vignetting, to make sure there is no chromatic aberration, to make sure there is not even a single spot which is like not absolutely sharp. That is why these are big. These are not big because, oh, it's full frame. It's big because they are compensating for a lot of things. So when Micro Four Third came out, people like on paper thought, oh, this is amazing. In reality, That was the lie. That is the biggest problem with Micro Four Third. It came after APS-C. Again, it lied, like flat out. The images like this, oh, these two are same. No, the millimeter is same. Yes, field of view, basically how wide or shallow, narrow area you are seeing, that's absolutely true. However, the aperture also gets multiplied. So let's say this has aperture of f4. This gets f4 multiplied by 2 in case of Micro Four Third. So you end up with f8, and you can understand if you need f4 for fast sports photography. If you have f8 lens, you have to bump up your ISO way too much. So that lie created a scenario where lot of people bought Micro Four Third, but soon they realized the lenses are not good. So you will see people using the word speed booster. Yeah, that's what they are doing, is taking a full frame lens or a APS-C lens, because APS-C is still a bit bigger than Micro Four Third, and then cramming down that field of view into a smaller sensor to get that exposure, to get that shallow depth of field, because this was built solely on a lie. Now there are certain Micro Four Third lenses that are like f0.95, which will give you f1.2, but they are very expensive. Not all of them have full frame, and not to mention in terms of quality, vignetting and other things, they are not that good. So there are a reason, like idiots did not build these lenses, Nikon lenses or Canon lenses. There is a reason for their size. Now, okay, let's say you are okay with that. Let's say you are comfortable with that. You like, okay, I don't need the shallowest background bit. I don't need sports photography lenses. Is there an option for me where I can buy a small camera with small lens selection and be happy with it? Your answer is Fuji. Now, why not Panasonic? I told you, like APS-C came way before Micro Four Third, and APS-C has a lot more lens selection, and Micro Four Third is already dead because Panasonic already jumped out of it, and Olympus cameras haven't been like, wowing people with their spec sheets, and that was the whole reason why this was even built, to have high quality specs on a small camera. If the specs don't match up, if this ends up having lower specs than a full frame camera, there is no point in buying this. And Panasonic realized this. Panasonic is like, okay, I'm out. They're only gonna release one camera more and few lenses, but then they're gonna bail out. So understand this. I can't recommend you to buy this system. Now, of course, let's say you are only gonna do one thing. Let's say you want to do streaming and you want to use like all old Panasonic systems. That's a very good use case because it has USB charging and it has very good clean HDMI output. Boom, very good setup, go for it. But if you want to do photography and that's your thing, you want to do photography, bit of videography, and you want to expand and breathe and buy more lenses in case of an interchangeable lens system, Fuji is your only option. You can buy Fuji. Now, why Fuji is your only option? Because Fuji, when they realized they were competing against Canon and Nikon, they created a very unique strategy. They're like, okay, I'm gonna compete where they are not competing. So they went for APS-C only and medium format. So they bypassed full frame. Now that created a scenario where every APS-C Fuji was releasing was getting better and better and better and better. Canon and Nikon did not do that because that will conflict with their, in conflict with their full frame lineup. So Fuji has the best feature set in a APS-C system, including performance. So that is why Fuji is there. And Fuji only makes APS-C lens, so you don't even have to worry about it. It's like, is it Fuji lens? Yes. That means it's APS-C lens. There is no crop factor, there is no multiplication. Do that in case you need double checking, but it is very stylish, very useful, and very best you can buy in APS-C. Micro Four Third, if you want to expand your photography, I would urge you to stay away from them because it was built on a lie that you can have small lenses. And everybody on the YouTube, you can see like, oh, they have speed booster or they have full frame lenses to compensate for that. So in APS-C versus Micro Four Third, go with APS-C. If you have one use case scenario, go with Micro Four Third. So let's come to the grand thing about full frame. So what do we have here? Now we have a lot of options. 4 options came out in 2018. We have Nikon, we have Canon, we have Sony, we have Lumix. Now, why don't I recommend DSLRs? One simple reason. We as a current generation are coming from a mobile phone. Our ancestor, or people who came before us, they came from point and shoot camera, which was not that good. So they were comfortable using DSLRs. If you and I use DSLR, we get frustrated. Why? Because the viewfinder is ugly, and not to mention it's not showing you what you are getting. Like I took a photo, okay, boom, but I do not know the exposure. I do not know whether it was in focus. I do not know how it came out. So for that reason, that feedback loop is not there. That creates a problem. Now, early days mobile phones were flat out useless. That's why people had to have DSLRs to get any useful feature, but that's no longer true. So right now, if you use a DSLR system, there's a very good chance you're gonna buy a cheap DSLR and it's gonna become a paperweight. I have seen many friends do that. Why? Because DSLR are not easy to use. They do not give you feedback. Okay, this is what you are capturing, this is what you're gonna get. and that there are multiple reasons for that. First, your sensor is sensor itself does not have the autofocus system. The autofocus system is independent, and then you have points. This is the first thing people will get confused about when they get a DSLR for the first time. If not like a nuts, if you are getting DSLR for the first time, so what are those points? Why do I have to have my point exactly there compared to your mobile phone, which can focus anywhere in the screen? That's why I'm not even thinking about DSLR. DSLRs are dead. They will take another 10 to 15 years before they vanish. But mirrorless is the future, because it gives you what you are capturing. It does not matter what I see. It only matters like what my lenses are, like, you know, what my camera sensor is seeing, because that's what you're gonna print. You're not gonna print, oh, I saw that from my camera lens. You're gonna print what your sensor captured. For that reason, full frame mirrorless is the future. So let's talk about Canon. Now Canon, all you have to understand, Canon is the only company that has patent for full frame flip out screen. They are the only one that gonna give that. Now there are some ways to bypass that patent, but nobody is gonna do that. So please, if flip out screen is crucial for you, do not even think any other company other than Canon. Now they have the best lenses out there. Not good body, so please do not mistake for, like, let's say I'm gonna put a very expensive Canon lens with very cheap camera body. You're not gonna get very good result, because let's say if the sensor, let's say in RP, Canon RP, which is very cheap, has very low dynamic range. So you took a wildlife like a wildlife photography, and you have a very large amount of highlight and very large amount of shadow. You're not able to recover that, even though your lens is amazing, simply because the sensor is low. So you at least have to have Canon EOS R, and you have to wait for higher end cameras to actually extract the quality out of it, because the lenses are amazing. If you want to invest in a lens and this is what you want, like I want the greatest lens out there, Canon is gonna give it to you. And you want flip out, Canon is the only one that's gonna give it to you. What about Sony? Now Sony is very versatile. Sony is like that kid who studied in exam. Like Sony built this whole system brick by brick, day by day, and over the years they have reached a very high level of great video quality. This is the reason why Panasonic backed out from Micro Four Third, because unless Sony had created a full frame camera which has IBIS, there was no competition for Panasonic. Sony created a Micro Four full frame mirrorless system. It changed the whole world, because full frame, every professional wants that full frame. And now you might be like, okay, I can get very high image quality with my small sensors. Yes, you can. Heck, Sony itself releases a small compact camera which has 1-inch sensor. They don't have to pack, full frame sensor in everything. But when you are talking about a professional, there is certain class to it. You say, I'm using a full frame camera. Okay, you are in a league. And same goes for medium format. Let's say you go to a product photography for, like, let's say Rolex watches. You show up with a full frame camera, they're gonna say, that's the door, please disappear. You have to show up with a medium format camera, some phase 1 camera, or Fuji full medium format camera. You can't show up with a full frame. So there is a certain class to full frame, and all the lenses are built for full frame. So when Sony created full frame mirrorless, and they were good, it was not great at the first, but it was good. It changed the industry, and by the time people started to think, oh, it might change the industry, Sony released a Sony A7 Mark III, which blew everybody away, because for a full frame camera it was very cheap when it came out. I'm talking at the year when it came out, which is 2 to 3 years from now. It was very cheap, and the features it had, including dual card slot, it was amazing. It was mind-boggling. So, and Sony has really polished their video systems and their autofocus system and their lens lineup also. So at this point, you are gonna get very good lens, not the greatest. If you want the greatest lens, go for Canon. If you want good, more than good enough. Now be mindful when I'm saying more than good enough, unless I show you back to back compared to a EOS R lens versus a Canon Sony G Master lens, you're not gonna notice. Sony G Master lenses are very good. Unless somebody shows you back to back, then only you're gonna know, oh, Sony lenses are bit dull. So if you want more than good enough performance, more than good enough video features, more than, like, basically all-rounder camera, Sony is more than good enough. Sony's even lens lineup is now complete. So Sony is very good in this scenario. However, Nikon is very poor right now. Nikon's only advantage compared to Canon is Nikon knows how to make good electronics. Outcome, their video features is very good. Now, not as great as Sony, but it is very good. And because it can do full frame 4K, Canon cannot do that. Canon does not have the electronics to do that. And Nikon also has very good lenses. So at this point, I'm not including Panasonic, because Panasonic needs a lot of things before they can even jump into the fray, specifically with lens. All these puppy already have lens. Sony has the largest amount of lens connection, and be mindful, Sony lens mount is open. That means any third party manufacturer can make the lenses legally. as in like does not require reverse engineering. That means even if there is a bug, they can fix it using Sony itself. Like as in, let's say, Tamron lens that came out, which was very good, but it was having an issue with autofocus. They fixed it. The firmware patch was uploaded into your lens using your camera. You did not need to carry it to a service center, and lenses work flawlessly with advanced functions like eye detect and other things, including animal eye detect. So at this point, if you want a versatile system and you're like, I want versatility first and foremost, you can get Sony. Only thing you're gonna be compromising in is you're never gonna get a flip out screen. Never. Don't even think about it. You're not gonna get flip out screen. If you want the latest and greatest lens technology, go with Canon. Now if you already have Nikon, go with Nikon. Now if you already have Nikon glass and you want 4K, you can go with Nikon, because right now Nikon is lacking behind. So they really need to up their game in next generation release, otherwise they might actually disappear this time. So this is with full frame. So then the question becomes what to choose, right? That's the question. That's the final question. First and foremost, know yourself. What the heck you're gonna need it for? Now if you are a guy who just wants to travel and just want to have a good camera, I would say go with Sony RX100 series, simply because it's compact and it's not gonna become a paperweight. Then you want to have interchangeable lens camera and you still don't want to, like, you know, have a very big bulky awesome camera, I would urge you with Fuji X-T3, simply because it's lightweight, lenses are good, and it has a feel to it. Like when you have a Fuji in your hand, it looks like an accessory. It's like fancy thing. It's a well built system. It does not look like a black thing. It looks a very cool, well built system. So for that kind of scenario, I would say go with Fuji. Now you want to do anything other than that, you want to go full frame, go with either Sony or Nikon or Canon. So these three you have to choose yourself. You want the best lens, go with Canon. You want the most versatility and largest amount of video feature, go with Sony. Nikon still is catching up. So these are your needs. Now on top of that, please be aware of that you are buying a system you can't change afterwards. So please pay attention to this. Sit down, think about it, what you want to do in the future. Think about it, because you can't change it. Let's say you bought a Sony APS-C series camera A6500 and it's very good. Now you bought A6400. That's also awesome because it has no recording limit, and you bought APS-C lens. Then you upgraded to Sony A7 Mark III. Has the deal, those lenses are no longer useful. So please think about it. It's a system. You can't change it whenever you want to. And thinking ahead is crucial here, because when I bought this camera, at that time I was a 3D game artist, so I was just thinking like, okay, I'm gonna do a bit of astrophotography, nothing more than that. Now I'm doing video, so there are certain features that are missing in it, mainly HDMI out, so I can't use this as my streaming camera. So in this sort of scenario, if I had thought ahead, I would have gone with Sony. So please think ahead, and before you do any purchase, select the lens first. Please select the lens before you do anything. Just sit down. Okay, what kind of lens do you want? And don't go for the holy trinity lens, or like, what do you want? Do you want like a prime lens which is light, easy, and very good quality? Choose those lenses first. If you like want a versatile camera like Sony in scenario, Sony also releases a 24 to 240 millimeter lens, which is not the greatest, but it is cheap and it is very good, like in terms of sharpness, and it's a very versatile. A 10x lens in a full frame, that's amazing. Then you want to have, like, you know, Canon system. Now be mindful, Canon gives the best lens, Canon 50f 1.2, which is amazing, but it's very heavy, so please be aware of that. That is why I'm saying choose the lens first. After you selected the lens, then think ahead, then you will be aware which system you're gonna buy, and then you will be on your way. So this was my presentation on what to buy. I hope you liked it or learned from it. In that case, please leave a like and please click the ad shown in this video. It will directly help me. And if you didn't like it, don't worry about it. You can dislike it. I would urge you to press it twice. And please leave a comment, because I reply to all of them. And subscribe. Press the bell icon if you are free. And as always, thanks for watching.